Namaste and welcome to Indian Diplomacy, show about India's relations with important countries around the world, India's involvement in key regions and sub-regions around the world, India's contributions to global governance and international peace and security and prosperity. Viewers, this episode we are looking at India's involvement in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. The SCO is by land area and population size one of the largest pan-regional organizations in the world, accounting for nearly 30% of global GDP, 40% of the world's population, and encompassing South Asia, Central Asia, Eurasia, as well as East Asia. This a very unique institution that's evolved over the last 20 years. Since its founding in 2001, India became a member in 2017 and ever since has been offering thought leadership as well as involved in advancing the joint common shared agenda of the SCO. So to discuss the SCO and India's role in it, I am privileged to introduce you to Dr. Meena Singh Roy. Dr. Meena Singh Roy is a specialist on Central Asia. She was a former head of research at the Institute for Defence and Strategic Analysis, a major think tank in India on Central Asia, and Dr. Roy has also authored a book on the SCO and India. So welcome to the show, Dr. Roy.
Thank you so much. It is a privilege to be here and speaking on the very important organization. So thank you for having me for the discussion.
Dr. Roy, when we talk of SCO, it's completed 2 decades and you have been tracking it so closely for a long time. So what is the report card on this? I mean, it's now entering its 3rd decade in existence. It hasn't fallen by the wayside. I mean, continues to have annual summits and ministerials and has a whole agenda, declarations, whole gamut of diplomatic activity around this multilateral organization, and India has entered it in 2017 as a full member. So your verdict on the SCO, how effective has it been overall in terms of its core goals, and how functional has it been, and what's the way forward?
Well, I think SCO is one of those very unique organizations, and I would call it an Asian organization. And there are perceptions about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the earlier years, and the reality on ground was somewhat very different. But at the same time, let us look at, you said, the report card of the organization. If we compare Shanghai Cooperation Organization with the other regional groupings and all, so I would say the report card, the results, the effectiveness have been somewhat mixed. There have been perceptions of maybe, that SCO will deliver more. The border issues were the agenda in the initial years from 96. There are phases of the development of this organization that I would say. The first phase, of course, was when they were looking at their border issues, and they did manage to handle all of it. Thereafter, in 2001, the global and the regional scenario also started changing, and that is how you see the effectiveness, whether it was in the field of security, whether it was in the field of integrating, the Eurasian region together. But there was also, this perception that it is the organization led by Russia and China, and the interest of the smaller states. So it became a big power, small power syndrome as well. But if we see,
and with our entry,
our entry, of course, was we became observer in 2005. And till 2017, there was a debate: should India be a part of it? Should India not be a part of it? And there was a demand, from within, from the Russians, from the Central Asian republics, that India need to, play much more active role. And I suppose in 2017, India joined as a full member, and even Pakistan became a full member at that time. So there were undercurrents within the SCO, when we look at it, but they saw greater merit in India joining, because India brings with itself the developmental diplomacy, the demand-driven, kind of engagement.
It's a huge market.
It's a huge market. And let us look at, what SCO has done, whether it is the security area. In the economic field, I would say, the achievements have not come up to the mark, but to expect so much from an organization in 2 decades, but I would say that in the security arena, in the structural, institutions that have come up, whether we talk about people to people contact, the culture, the security, the RATs that we have, the regional anti-terrorist structure which is in place. You have the foreign ministers, meet, you have the defense ministers meet. So over the years, national security advisors meet. So it has grown in size and scope. There was a lot of debate within the Central Asian republics that their concerns were not addressed. And in certain events,
and India's presence presumably helps to push the Central Asian interests more.
Exactly. So India has always had a very, very positive image when we are talking about Central Asia. In fact, there were two viewpoints. There was one debate that if India and Pakistan join, there might be an Indo-Pak, sort of
bilateral bad blood.
But let us look at it. The SCO is a regional and it's a multilateral organization. So one needs to ensure that the multilateral initiatives, will, and the group interests, basically the Eurasian region, its geography, the resources, and let us see the larger role which Eurasia plays in the grand, international strategies that are being carved out, whether talk about the major players, whether we talk about the regional players, and let's not forget what was happening in Afghanistan.
Absolutely, I'll come back to that. Viewers, Prime Minister of India spoke at the 2021 SCO summit and warned about the rising threats of extremism and radicalism to the entire region, and how we must, we meaning the SCO members, collectively should tackle the fountainhead of terrorism. Let's listen in and then continue the discussion.
मेरा मानना है कि इस क्षेत्र में सबसे बड़ी चुनौतियां शांति, सुरक्षा और ट्रस्ट डेफिसिट से संबंधित है, और इन समस्याओं का मूल कारण बढ़ता हुआ रेडिकलाइजेशन है। अफगानिस्तान में हाल के घटनाक्रम ने इस चुनौती को और स्पष्ट कर दिया है। इस मुद्दे पर एससीओ को पहल लेकर कार्य करना चाहिए। यदि हम इतिहास पर नजर डालें तो पाएंगे कि मध्य एशिया का क्षेत्र मॉडरेट और प्रोग्रेसिव कल्चर और वैल्यूज का एक प्रकार से गढ़ रहा है, किला रहा है। सूफीवाद जैसी परंपराएं यहां सदियों से पनपी और पूरे क्षेत्र और विश्व में फैली। इनकी छवि हम आज भी इस क्षेत्र की सांस्कृतिक विरासत में देख सकते हैं। मध्य एशिया की इस ऐतिहासिक धरोहर के आधार पर एससीओ को रेडिकलाइजेशन और एक्सट्रीमिज्म से लड़ने का एक साझा टेम्पलेट डेवलप करना चाहिए। भारत में और एससीओ के लगभग सभी देशों में इस्लाम से जुड़ी मॉडरेट, टॉलरेंट और इंक्लूसिव संस्थाएं और परंपराएं हैं। एससीओ को इनके बीच एक मजबूत नेटवर्क विकसित करने के लिए काम करना चाहिए। इस संदर्भ में मैं एससीओ के रैट्स मैकेनिज्म द्वारा किए जा रहे उपयोगी कार्य की प्रशंसा करता हूं। भारत ने एससीओ रैट्स की अपनी अध्यक्षता के दौरान जो कैलेंडर ऑफ एक्टिविटीज प्रस्तावित की है, उन पर हमें सभी एससीओ पार्टनर्स के सक्रिय सहयोग की अपेक्षा है। एक्सेलेंसी, रेडिकलाइजेशन से लड़ाई, क्षेत्रीय सुरक्षा और आपसी ट्रस्ट के लिए तो आवश्यक है ही, यह हमारी युवा पीढ़ियों के उज्जवल भविष्य के लिए भी जरूरी है। विकसित विश्व के साथ प्रतिस्पर्धा के लिए हमारे क्षेत्र को उभरती टेक्नोलॉजी में स्टेक होल्डर बनना होगा। इसके लिए हमें अपने प्रतिभाशाली युवाओं को विज्ञान और रेशनल थिंकिंग की ओर प्रोत्साहित करना होगा। हम अपने एंटरप्रेन्योर्स और स्टार्टअप्स को एक दूसरे से जोड़कर इस तरह की सोच, इस तरह की इनोवेटिव स्पिरिट को बढ़ावा दे सकते हैं।
Viewers, Prime Minister of India addressing his counterparts at the SCO summit and talking about the imperative for de-radicalization and how this poison has been spreading in the whole region, the jihadist menace, and how it can be countered. Prime Minister has always led with new ideas to transform whichever grouping India is a part of, and here he is talking about new initiatives that need to be taken by the group as a whole to check this challenge, how to divert the minds of young people into productive and rational channels, how to wean them away from the extremist ideology and thinking. Prime Minister also talked about Afghanistan and how it has remained a major problem for us because this whole region has been at the receiving end of the fallout of the Taliban takeover in August 2021, and India has been insisting that Afghanistan should be a central objective of the SCO to stabilize the country, to prevent it from externalizing radical currents in the whole region. Dr. Roy, Afghanistan, clearly the evidence is showing, the UN reports and all of them are clearly showing that since the fall of the UN recognized government in August 2021, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Pakistani jihadist groups, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Uzbek terrorist groups, Tajik terrorist groups, even groups, Uyghur separatist and extremist groups which aim at China, all these groups continue to flourish and in fact are rearming and regrouping. So this is obviously the most urgent issue on the agenda for SCO, and there have been a lot of consultations, a lot of brainstorming and trying to come up with, but still at the end of the day it looks like the group as a whole is not prepared for the negative externalities coming out of Afghanistan. So India is insisting on a joint action plan. So what could SCO do on Afghanistan now that there is a de facto regime there? No country is recognizing the Taliban, but the point is we want to push back these forces that seem to be spreading out of Afghanistan, with unfortunately still with the abetment of a neighboring country like Pakistan, which is an SCO member itself. So there is this whole issue of the double standards also. We have declarations of SCO, people are signing on to summits. In fact, our External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar has said that we oppose terrorism in all its forms. And that's an important contribution of India, because there are countries, especially China and Pakistan, that say we want counter-terrorism, but then when it comes to the proof of the pudding is in eating it, right? Like they're not showing the intent in cracking down on these terror groups. So terrorism in Afghanistan, what do you think the SCO can do?
Well, as far as the problem of extremism and terrorism is concerned, this is one of the major agenda item, not only in this sort of last or the upcoming summit meeting, but it has been the core problem when we are talking about the Eurasian region. And let us, I mean, there was reference, you did refer to these extremist jihadi, groups which are there. They start from Syria to, Afghanistan, to Central Asia, to South Asia, and this is a global problem, and regionally we have suffered the most. So have the Central Asian republics. If we look at the experience of Uzbekistan today, they have been, handling, and I think the Uzbek way of addressing this problem, I mean having traveled there since 2001 till now, one has to see how they have started it. But the SCO, the problem, the irony is that you said China, Pakistan, there cannot be double standards when we are talking on such a serious problem like cross-border terrorism, extremism in any form. And I think India has been the voice which is recognized, which is accepted. And I do feel if the member states are serious about addressing, then the action plan, can be, and now with India full member, and also, it's going to be the next host of the summit meeting next year in 2023.
Yeah.
So India has its own, reputation. India has its own voice, which is acceptable also. But I do feel that, there are hurdles, there are, spokes which would come up. Let's take the list of the jihadi organizations, when it comes to China and Pakistan. They have tried to, not include certain extremist groups which should have been the part of the SCO list. So those are the, sort of issues which need to be debated, which need to be pushed. And today, the regional alignments and the realignments which are happening, given the situation that we are in, we have the Taliban government in Afghanistan, but if we look at the track record of the human rights violation, whether they are children, and the regrouping of this, it is one of the very, very significant. But there is also difference of opinion where everybody agrees not recognizing Taliban, but everybody is also engaging Taliban.
On one-on-one basis.
One-on-one.
Yeah.
Right. Now, the SCO has that potential to bring everybody on table and discuss those. I am not expecting that the miracle is going to happen and suddenly tomorrow things would change. But I think it is a good platform, at least to bring those issues and raise them. You need to forget about your bilateral issues, and I said this is a multilateral organization, and regionally the countries have to ensure that this menace doesn't grow, and the regionally it is addressed collectively.
Being a team player is very important, says Dr. Meena Singh Roy, and very I think well said, because the group interests should override the individual narrow vested self-interest or geopolitical calculations of member states. Otherwise, the organization itself loses its relevance. Military exercises and joint interoperability and these kind of things also have been going on along with the counter-terrorism as part of a regional. In fact, some of the commentators in the West who are highly critical of SCO say that this is an effort to create an Asian NATO or something like that against the West and a military alliance. It's not a military alliance really, it's more like a diplomatic grouping. But still on that front, do you think the fact that Chinese and Pakistani and Indian soldiers, for example, we have major differences among ourselves, territorial disputes and all, but the fact that they participate in these joint exercises and so on could potentially give them a different understanding of each other? I'm talking about the socialization effects of these multilateral groupings. Could they tamp down a little bit of the bilateral bad blood, or do you not see that with SCO?
No, I think, yes, there has been a big debate on, SCO becoming, NATO of the East and stuff like that. But let us look at the reality on ground. Has SCO, this anti-terror group, the military exercises, let us look at the examples. Did SCO forces, even if it was an anti-terror group, doing the military exercises in Russia and China and other places, have they ever interfered in any of the countries? The answer is no. When there was an issue in say for example in Kazakhstan, it was CSTO which came.
The Russians, led by the Russians.
That's a military alliance. And even in the SCO statements, in the various communiques that you see, they have made it very clear. This is basically focused on the handling of countering the terrorism. As to when you bring a military of the different member states together, I would see it as a CBM as well,
a confidence building measure.
Confidence building measure. You talked about the bilateral issues. Now there is lot you can learn, there is lot you can observe, there is lot, you see as to how various countries, it is a great learning thing for the armed forces who go and participate. You see the strength of the other partner, whether it is Russia, whether it is China, whether it is Pakistan, whether it is, and how you can collectively contribute towards, if there is
goals. Absolutely.
I just wonder, hypothetically, will there be a situation of some terrorist attack in the SCO member states, and then I guess this would be put to a test. Will they get involved?
Can we do a joint operation?
Exactly.
Something like
so
that.
This is something which is for the future. I don't know how things are going to evolve, but for now, I think the military personnels, they get exposure. They broaden their basically horizons.
Absolutely.
So interacting with your regional member countries is something which is always an advantage,
setting, as opposed to bilateral, which can be more conflicted.
Bilaterally we are doing military exercises. That's a very different.
But we never do with China or Pakistan.
We never do. No, but China you do bilaterally with Pakistan was a thing. There was.
I meant because they're adversarial.
Exactly.
That logic goes out when you do a joint
yes.
thing. So, viewers, apart from security, the other big pillar of the SCO is connectivity, and India has been a big votary for it. I'd like you to hear from a senior official of the Ministry of External Affairs, Reenat Sandhu, talking about our vision for connectivity of this entire Pan-Asian region.
We already have a trilateral mechanism of India, Iran, Uzbekistan on the Chabahar port. Other Central Asian countries have also expressed interest in joining this initiative. The INSTC is a functional route through the Bandar Abbas port of Iran that further passes through Azerbaijan or alternatively through Caspian Sea to Russia. Usage of this route can reduce the time taken from 40 to 45 days to 20 to 25 days between India and Russia, as well as reduce costs by 30 to 40%. Given the landlocked nature of Central Asian countries and the lack of overland connectivity with India, there has been understandably a considerable emphasis on the need for promoting mutual connectivity to enhance trade and commerce between India and the Central Asian countries. Both Russia and Iran are key stakeholders and participants of the INSTC. It is in the interest of all member countries of the INSTC that there is greater utilization of this route. In addition, India is also a member of the Ashgabat Agreement that we joined in 2018 and which enables connectivity between Central Asia and the Persian Gulf. This also synchronizes with other transport corridors in the region, including the INSTC. India stands ready to plan, build, invest, and participate in connectivity projects based on the priorities of transparency, broad participation, local priorities, financial sustainability, and respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries.
So, viewers, Reenat Sandhu talking about India's principled approach to connectivity, and she mentioned the Chabahar port and the INSTC, the International North-South Transport Corridor. Now, this very much overlaps with the SCO membership. Iran is going to become a member of SCO soon, and that makes it complete. Dr. Roy, INSTC, recently there was a lot of excitement about the fact that the first shipment from Russia all the way reached the port of Mumbai via the Caspian Sea and via a number of SCO member countries. So this seems like a very promising thing. It's been long heralded, but has finally been operationalized. And then there is the Chabahar port also, which our Minister of Shipping visited earlier in 2022, and we hope that it can be reinvigorated. It had been lying in some limbo because of the US sanctions on Iran and all those things. There are obstacles still to connectivity, but we hope India wants really to remove all these obstacles.
You talk about the report card. So on connectivity, we've been working with or without SCO also, but the game changer would be when collectively all the SCO member states and now Iran becoming a full member in the SCO. We also know how Iran, China, Russia are working together, and India has its own unique position to deal with each one of them. INSTC, we've been working on it, and you said first, let's see, these are operational routes. The problem is not the operationalization of the INSTC. And for me as a researcher, INSTC is just not one route, We are looking at multi-dimensional connectivity, and that is one. I mean, there are maps which can be seen on the IDSA website we have. It shows various dimensions and the various connectivity projects which we are looking at as a part of the INSTC. One is, of course, which has been mostly talked about through Bandar Abbas, but there are many other ports,
Yeah.
So what we are looking, we are looking not only at the various ports in Iran, but we are also, China is a part of Shanghai Cooperation Organization today. Now, if one looks at the connectivity and the INSTC, China has to play a constructive role in there, and there has to be discussion, debate on how each member state can contribute towards making these various connectivity projects. But China also has its own strategic agenda, and on connectivity especially. I call it an integration game, which various countries are playing. Whether we talk about the INSTC, India has already done dry runs. We have the reports in place. We also know what the potential is. We need to bring in private sector there. And how do you bring in private sector? It is the volume of the trade that we are looking at. And let me tell you, even the countries like Singapore would very much want to use this, connectivity.
For their access to Europe and all.
Yes. Let's talk about Chabahar. Yes, there have been setbacks. Yes, there have been, certain, I would say, lack of information, or maybe, there's need for greater information sharing as to how it can be used. But let's talk about the Taliban, which is there in power today. They would also like their country
as a transit country to generate free.
Exactly.
It's in their interest.
Now, how you can use that to ensure that there is a greater, you can manage that peace, and as to you can bargain with them on the sanctions. Let us say Chabahar is out of the sanctions, but I think people need to be, the private sector, they need to be told that if you do this, so there is a communication gap, I would say. So greater interaction, greater debate within the SU, and SU can do it. It would be a win-win situation for each member state.
Absolutely. Viewers, Dr. Meena Singh Roy says that it can be a win-win situation. The point is there are group interests and we need team players. I think that's a bigger message from this discussion. SCO can go forward and really create miracles for its people in terms of prosperity, in terms of security, only if there is teamwork and there is a common approach to shared problems. So it's a kind of a regional governance that is required, and we hope that India's constructive role and leadership role in SCO will help it achieve its goals. Dr. Meena Singh Roy, thank you so much for sharing your deep insights with the audience.
Thank you so much.
So viewers, keep thinking about common interests and regional groupings, multilateral institutions of which India is an important player. I'll see you again next time on Indian Diplomacy. Until then, keep watching DD India, India's national television channel. Take care.